Dive back into the Insightful in Technology podcast for part two of Robert Plotkin's interview on AI and patent law. Tune in for cutting edge insights and captivating discussions. Don't miss the chance to expand your knowledge. Watch now.
The first thing people always ask is, oh, can the AI system be named as an inventor? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if an AI system creates a design for a drug, should the AI be named as an inventor? In fact, this question has been examined by the U.S. Patent Office, by U.S. courts, by some courts in other countries in recent years. So far, every patent office and every court that's addressed it has answered no, that an AI system can't be named as an inventor. I think that's the right answer. Actually, I literally posted an article on LinkedIn this morning about that and why I think that's correct. I don't go into detail, but if you think about why do we have a patent system in the first place? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people assume it's sort of to reward people for inventing. You know, you put in a lot of work to come up with this a new drug, create a new drug. You should be rewarded for that financially, and the patent helps you generate money from the drug. So that's what it. But really, but reward is not what the purpose of the patent system is. It's actually to provide people with a motivation to invent new things and to, what we say, disclose those inventions to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Because a patent is a document that's available to the public. So what does that mean? It means, you know, when you've got a person who's a brilliant inventor, and they wake up in the morning and they decide, you know, how should I spend my day? Should I try to work on inventing a new drug? The idea is this: if they know that when they invent the drug and they put 5 years of their life into coming up with that drug, and they get investors who put tens of millions of dollars into the drug development, if they know that when that's all done, they can protect themselves against other companies knocking them off for free,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be more likely to invest all of that time and effort and money into inventing something new, because they'll have some protection that will make it more likely they'll earn back their time and money. On the flip side, you could say, if there were no patent protection available, why would someone put their time and effort, particularly in situations where it costs a lot of money and investment? Why would they put all of that in if they know that as soon as they put the product out into the public, anyone else can see it and then start knocking them off for free? So that's the reason. People respond to these types of incentives that the patent system gives. And the argument I've been making, you can see it in the article, quite a few I've actually published on LinkedIn recently.
Mm-hmm.
AI systems don't respond to incentives. AI systems don't get motivated to do what they do by the promise of a patent or of earning money from a patent. If you ask ChatGPT, help me brainstorm about something, it just responds to you. It won't not respond if it thinks it's not going to get paid. I mean, it may sound bizarre or strange, but there's no reason to give an AI system listed as an inventor on a patent, or to give it patent rights. It just doesn't respond to the incentives of the patent system. So that's the whole reason we have a patent system. That's why. So I actually think this issue of whether we should name AI as an inventor, although it's the first thing everyone thinks of, maybe because of science fiction and so forth, you know, that it's not the most important. It's not the most important issue that AI raises for the patent system. I mean, I can talk very, very briefly about one issue that it does raise, which is,
Okay.
you know, maybe you're familiar. People have been observing a lot ever since ChatGPT came around, which isn't particularly good at inventing, but it's good at doing things like writing or brainstorming or coming up with ideas or summarizing information. It's good at a lot of stuff. You know, people have been observing that if you use ChatGPT to write, it can essentially boost your writing skill, right? It can enable you to write things more quickly, and especially if you're if you're not that good as a writer, if you're at the low end of the writing skill spectrum, it can
Hmm.
make you be, when I say make you be, I mean enable you to produce writing that's a lot better than you could on your own if you didn't have it, right? So
Hmm.
that's like a boost. It's like a writing skill booster. And the same is true for AI that's used in the process of inventing. Okay, inventors use things to help them come up with, like I said, new designs for drugs. There's software that can basically simulate how new chemical structures that could be used for drugs, how those might behave in the real world, and evaluate them and enable people to test out a huge number of possible drug designs without ever
Hmm.
building them in a lab, much more quickly and easily and less expensively than would be possible before. It's like simulating a large number of experiments. So in that way, a human drug inventor can use that type of technology to boost their ability to try out new drug designs and evaluate them much more quickly, easily, and less expensively than would have been possible before if they had to build it, create everything in the lab. So the big issue that raises is if it becomes way more easy to invent new things, should those new things be patentable anymore? If it
Hmm.
becomes possible for a larger range of people to invent things like drugs or mechanical devices or car engines or software, if it becomes easier, why do we need patents to encourage
Hmm.
people to invent new things if basically, I don't want to say anyone can do it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really the bigger issue. And if it becomes easier, should the bar be raised higher to get a patent? Should you have to show that what you came up with is sort of more inventive in order to be entitled to getting a patent than you would have before the existence of AI? I know it's a very long-winded answer, but I think that's really the tough issue that the patent system needs to grapple with is how can we make sure that as AI makes it easier to create new things, that we're not granting patents on things that are really easy for anyone to invent, because those
Hmm.
shouldn't be patentable. I mean, does that make sense?
Yes, and the only thing I would say to your response would be, have you ever worked with, or you described like how clients can, use AI to simulate other designs or recipes for, potential drugs and whatnot. If they're using AI in that fashion, I guess in the same respect, is it documented anywhere in the patent description that they used AI to come up with the infrastructure for their invention?
It may be or it may not be. It depends on what they're trying to get protection for. So you can imagine, let's take an example of a drug again, which has a chemical structure. I am not a chemist, but I'll just say, normally a patent for a drug describes what the chemical structure of the drug is.
Hmm.
Now, let's say you use some AI to help you come up with that structure. You don't, and you want to get a patent just on that drug. You
Hmm.
don't need to say in the patent that you used AI to create it. All you need to say is, here's the chemical structure of the drug. Here's what it does. It, does something to help cure or treat a certain disease. And that's really all that you need to do. It's the same if you used any other kind of method,
Hmm.
not just AI, traditional experimentation methods. You don't have to explain how you created the invention in the first place in order to get a patent on it. But it might be to your benefit to explain that you used AI to come up with this thing. Why? Because maybe by using AI to come up with this drug, the process of using it might have come up with 1,000 different variations of that drug. and perhaps even be capable of coming up with more. And so by describing how the AI works in the patent, you might be able to get a patent on a process for creating a range of drugs, such that if anyone else uses that process, they'll be infringing your patent. And then you're getting a patent on a drug creation process, not just a patent on a specific drug. But that's only true if the process is something you have created. If you use some off-the-shelf AI software to come up with a drug, you're not going to be able to get a patent on the process. So maybe one way to put it is what you're asking about clients I work with. When clients come to me, when they say, yeah, we came up with a drug or a piece of software and we used AI to create it, what I then push back on them with is, what thing did you do that required some ingenuity to come up with the end result? If all you did was take this AI software off the shelf and tell it, come up with something new, and it came up with something new, you probably are not going to be able to get a patent on whatever it created, drug, software, anything else, because anyone could have taken that software and done the same thing with it, and you're not going to be entitled, most likely, to a patent. In most cases, it's going to be necessary that you use the AI in some ingenious way that other people wouldn't have thought of in order to come up with the drug or whatever the invention is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I have a question on like this. So open source software versus closed. Is it typically like, let's talk about, so are there patents that come with open source, or is it only going to be closed source because you can license it out? So can we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this gets a little bit complicated, but I'll try to answer it this way. If you use open source software and in the process of using it, you come up with something new, that's some new piece of software that's patentable, whether you can really obtain a patent on that and enforce it is going to depend on what the open source license agreement said and how you made use of that software in your patentable invention. I mean, I don't know if you're probably aware, but I don't know if your listeners are aware, there's a wide range of open source licenses out there, and they all deal with issues of patents and intellectual property differently. Some of them are designed to try to ensure that if you use the open source software to come up with something new, that new piece of software must also be open source. Some of them let you use the open source software to come up with, let's say, a bigger piece of software that has the open source software as a component, and they'll let you get a patent on the new piece of software that you create with the open source software as a component. So I always tell people, if you're going to be creating new software and you're going to use open source as a part of it, if you want to be able to patent the bigger piece of software you create, read the open source software license that you're using carefully, or get a lawyer to do that. Not all open source software licenses are the same, in other words. That makes sense?
Yeah, because I could imagine like our listeners who are getting into it, and they might have a new idea and they might want to express it, are typically using open source software. So that is a good thing to kind of notate and kind of remember. Whereas like if you're looking forward to eventually having a new creation, new invention, and looking forward to patent it, to read those agreements, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't read the agreements.
And they're hard. I mean, I don't specialize in dealing with open source software. And some of those agreements are challenging for me to read and understand. When my clients have a tricky open source issue, I will refer them to other lawyers who specialize in that. So, if you're not a lawyer, it's going to be quite complicated. But I know I've dealt with situations where there's been startup companies, from the beginning, they've used open source, they've built on it, They created a bunch of new software built on open source, and then eventually down the road, they've had to cut the open source out and recreate that part of their software using something that's not open source in order to either patent or commercialize their technology. And that can be very time consuming and expensive if you've been building on that open source component for a long time. So yeah, it's really important from the beginning to think carefully about what open source software you're using.
Okay. I think we've already touched base on a couple of my questions regarding AI inventions and patents. Just in your description, like I appreciate how thorough you are, but you've summed up some of these already. So, let's try. Yeah, because some of the ones we had listed were like, what are some key considerations in patenting AI technologies, which I feel like you've already touched on. What legal implications does the use of AI algorithm pose to patent lawyers? And I feel like you touched on that in terms of like, if everyone can do it, what's the point of the patent system? So you went into detail about the patent system, and how will AI impact intellectual property strategies for businesses? And you told us about business methods, and the restrictions in place for those. So would you like to move to the last section?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can say is, totally outside of intellectual property, there are so many AI-based tools now that businesses can use. Of course, ChatGPT is the one that got the whole discussion started about a year ago. But there are many types of text models, language models like ChatGPT with chatbot-based tools. There's, of course, text to image. There's text to video. I mean, you saw the announcement from OpenAI about Sora, which can generate now videos just based on the description of what you want the video to contain. And there's lots of applications out there that are being sold for specific industries. I mean, in my field now, there's lots of software for use by lawyers in doing things like reviewing contracts, writing contracts, reviewing legal documents, doing legal research. There's tons of products out there for marketers to write emails, create marketing campaigns, all kinds of stuff. So at very low cost, the quality may not always be great, but if you learn how to make good use of it and combine AI generation with human review and human feedback and iteration back and forth, very often it's possible to produce output or to get tasks done more quickly, efficiently, and therefore for business inexpensively than before. So these are just things that any business now needs to be investigating: is what internal use can they make of AI that can increase their efficiency and help them to get their tasks done better than before. And the situation is just changing so rapidly. I'll use the Sora again. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the video, some of the videos it's been able to create, and people have posted what AI video creation software was able to do a year ago, which was not very good, versus today. And it's only 1 year later. And the same thing with text to image, like Midjourney or DALL-E. If you look at what those could create a year ago versus today, the improvement is just incredible. Now, we can't know that it's going to improve just as much in the next year, but the pace of innovation is just fantastic. And so I think any business owner or manager would be remiss not to be actively investigating how to make use of AI in their business processes.
To speak to the innovation of the space, this will be my question, I guess, the kind of umbrella question. I think it's more so outside the realm of like patents in general, but more so in the realm of just AI in general in like the business. Um, what's your opinion on the pace of innovation and how it's affecting the way people function, so to speak? So, for example, like, I know one of the main points for like the writer's strike was, the rise of AI and AI generated like scripts and like you're speaking about Sora being able to make, videos from just algorithms. Like, what would be your take on um, how people can kind of, I don't want to say combat innovation, but more so like how would you address it from speaking to someone who's not as in the know of what's going on?
Yeah, it's happening so fast that I don't want to say attempting to combat it is futile, but let's think of the
Mm-hmm.
writer's strike, right? What was the deal finally struck? Like August or so? It's only maybe
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 months ago. Just in that time, the ability to generate audio that sounds like someone's voice has gotten much,
Mm-hmm.
much better. There's products out now. What is it? 11 Labs is one. You give it like 5 minutes of a recording of your own voice, and then you can give it a script written in text, and it can speak out that script in something that sounds a lot like your own voice. Uh, and so that's recreating someone's voice using things they've never said in other languages. Also, that's getting a lot better. And now video. So you talk about Hollywood. How far are we away from it being possible to create a movie that looks photorealistic uh, without any live human actors? We're
Mm-hmm.
probably not that far. And if you think, oh, we still wouldn't be able to do that for the main cast. Well, what about all of the extras? This is one of the conversations that's happening about Sora, which is, if you pay close attention to it, there's glitches. It's not really professional quality, but how much of a, in what situations do you really need that? And in a
Mm-hmm.
movie, do where now you would need people for every single role, including back extras in the background of a restaurant or a crowd or anything else. How far are we away from only needing to hire a few people for the lead roles, and every other human you see in the film is AI generated? Uh, I think not that far away from that.
Yeah.
So, but let me just say this: the people's immediate reaction is the fear of replacement. But there's always a flip side, which is, doesn't this create
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for independent filmmakers then, who don't have the
Yes.
budget of Hollywood,
Exactly.
right?
And one example of I've actually seen that happen, it's a video game that I play, and one of the voice actors actually passed, and they got permission from his family to actually use AI to generate the rest of the lines for the game. And he's one of like the main voice actors in the game, and I didn't know that until after playing the game. So the fact that it's already in place, I think it only has a lot more areas of improvement to go, to be honest.
How far are we away from, yeah, a few people who are coders being able to create, a commercial quality video game, because all of the assets are things that they'll be able to create, using AI. So
Mm-hmm.
although it might have an effect on something like the Hollywood studios or the big game companies, it could create a huge opportunity for individuals or small companies uh, to leverage this in new ways. And that's always been the case with new technology. I mean, we're seeing it now in a podcast, right? How long ago was it
Mm-hmm.
that this kind of thing only happened at a television studio, amongst a few networks that had massive
Right.
resources to do not just the production, but the distribution and access to the stations and everything else. So this has always been the trend, and there's always multiple sides to it. Whatever gets disrupted, uh, creates opportunities on another side. So it's very hard to predict where this is going to go and what the net impact is going to be.
And I feel like that's why we want people to be more informed just in general, because always having the insight can only help, you navigate the space. But Shao, would you like to go into like the last portion of, how others can get to where you are?
Yes, so it's not every day we come across a lawyer, let alone software patent lawyer. Okay, so we need at least about like 3 to 5 tips of how you got to where you are and how others can as well.
Yeah. To become a patent lawyer, you do need to at least have an undergraduate degree in science or engineering. And then you need to, but one interesting thing is to become what's called a patent agent, you don't need to go to law school or have a law degree. You can have that bachelor's degree. Does have to be a 4-year degree at an accredited school, but if you have that in science or engineering, you can then take what's called the patent bar exam at the patent office and then get what's similar to a law license, but it's a license to submit patent applications to the patent office on behalf of clients as a non-lawyer. And other countries have similar things. So for anyone who has any interest in what we've talked about with respect to patents, but either doesn't want to or is not in a position to go to law school or become a lawyer, you can become a patent agent. So that's one thing I'll say. If you are interested in taking the other additional steps to become a lawyer, you go to law school, you get a law degree, and you take the patent bar and become a patent attorney. But there's a lot of careers in law that enable you to be working with technology in some way that don't require to be a patent lawyer. I work with a lot of other lawyers who do licensing. It could be music licensing. They can be an entertainment law where they're working with entertainers or with copyright owners. There can be communications lawyers, copyright, trademark. I mean, there's many, many different fields of law in which you can be working with people and companies in all kinds of technology industries and not necessarily do what I do, which is be a patent lawyer. So there's lots of different options. I always say to anyone who is interested in exploring it, try to get first seek out people like me who are practicing lawyers. Find out what is it like, what do we do, what do we like and dislike about what we do, what skills did we have to have and develop in order to do what we're doing. And then, if you're in school particularly, try to get an internship or a part-time job or a summer job. I mean, lots of law firms take on people to do that. There's nothing better than seeing what it's really like day to day to know whether it's something you're interested in pursuing. Because I'll say, even now in law, people have a lot of misconceptions about what it's like to be a lawyer or what lawyering is like. People still think of it as about being in court. A lot of times, I'm never in court. That's not what I do. I'm not a litigator. And most lawyers actually are never in court. Even most litigators don't spend a lot of their time in court. They spend a lot of time with their clients, preparing documents. So there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, from popular culture, television and movies and other things about what being a lawyer is like. So nothing is better to get a realistic idea of what it's like than meet with lawyers. And if you can, get that internship, part-time job, volunteer opportunity, something else like that to get that experience for yourself.
I like that because we heavily advocate for getting in front of people who are doing it already to just get the knowledge and also taking on those internships or just, the couple opportunities to get exposure to what you're interested in very early on. So I like that you mentioned that. And Byron, do you want to finish out the last couple questions in this section before we, do the outro?
Yeah, sure thing. I think he kind of already peaked on, what skills are essential for those interested in AI patent law. We'll just sum this up. We'll just combine these two questions. Just what are some things for people aspiring to do what you do, but specifically in AI?
You know, I think in almost any type of law, and it's definitely in what I do, reading and writing, you have to love reading and writing, because it's what I do a lot of. But honestly, I also interact with people a lot. A lot of what I do, I would say, is interviewing. You know, you have to both be interested in and develop the skill of what you're doing with me, which is active listening, you know,
Mhm.
asking questions, being curious in what someone else says, and trying to dive deeper into what they're saying. Why did I say that as a patent attorney? What I'm doing is obtaining patents on someone else's invention. I have to find
Mhm.
out what was the problem that motivated, what were they trying to solve? Every invention starts with a problem. The inventor says, oh, I want to get this car to go faster. There's a disease I want to treat. You know, there's a viruses on a computer I want to block, you know, and there's no product out there currently that solves that problem that I recognize. What can I do to come up with a solution? There's always a problem. So I have to find that out. What did they do? What path did they go down to solve it? What solution did they come up with? How does it work? Why does it work? Why is it better? I'm always asking these questions, and I have to be, you know, honestly, if I wasn't a curious person and interested in what other people are doing, I either wouldn't be a good patent attorney or I'd be miserable, you know. So there's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot of time actually working on my own in isolation, and then a lot of time working usually one-on-one or one-on-two, or small groups of people interacting with them. And that's true in a lot of fields of law. I mean, if you go into doing wills or family law or real estate closings or something, a lot of time this detailed preparation of documents and being incredibly detail oriented, and then a smaller focused amount of time interacting with your client, finding out what they want, what they're trying to accomplish, being a good listener, a good problem solver, and then going back and trying to get that done. So it's a combination of all of those things. Maybe the last thing I'd say, which a lot of people don't think about, it's probably true for almost any area of law, is you deal with a large number of cases. I mean, like I said, I usually have a few hundred patents in process at the patent office at any one time. I sometimes deal with people who are scientists in a lab, and they're working on one project for 2 years.
Mhm.
And that takes a certain skill to have that kind of dedication and focus and everything. And sometimes some of those people say to me, oh, I'm interested, maybe I'm going to go into patent law, become a patent lawyer. And I don't discourage them, but I say, just realize that if
Mhm.
you're the kind of person who is interested in diving into a single problem in that much depth for that long a time, you're almost certainly not going to be able to do it as a patent. You're dealing with a lot of different cases, jumping back and forth between them, and you have to enjoy that and have the skill of being able to do it. So I'm not saying one way is better or worse than the other. I'm just saying, if this is the field you want to go into, probably being if you're someone who needs to focus on one thing, probably be better for you to go to a
Mhm.
company that's maybe developing a new product, or being in a research lab, or a company that's doing development of new chemicals or something else, where you can just really focus on that one thing for a long period
Mhm.
of time.
So being able to kind of multitask and explore different parts of, who your clients are and like what they're working on would be
Absolutely.
beneficial. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So, Byron, any last things before we wrap it up with the motivational and insightful quotes?
No, I feel like I could ask some questions all day, to be honest.
I'll say I've definitely learned the most new stuff in this podcast, and I really
That's great.
appreciate you coming on. So I do want to ask you for the last thing, like, do you have like a quote that you carry with you, day to day to help you push through, handle like other different clients, something that keeps you going?
That's a really good question. I'm sure I could if I thought about it. I don't have one that really that really motivates me. Maybe, you know, there's a few out there that that humble me in dealing with new technology all the time. You know, there's one, I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but it was making predictions is really hard, especially about the future, meaning that no matter how much I work with inventors and innovators and see new technology developing, people often say to me, so, you know, what do you think is going to happen next? What's going to happen next in AI? Which of your clients is going to be super successful? I have to say, you know what? I don't know.
Yep.
When I say humbling,
That's the only.
I don't know. And anyone who tells you they know, you know, is being misleading to themselves or to you. I've seen trends develop over time. You know, I have some rough idea of trends, but particularly predicting how quickly something is going to happen. I have been wrong so many times in both directions. I'm thinking something's going to happen really soon and it happens 10 years later. And then the opposite, thinking something is going to take a really long time and it happens really quickly. I don't know. I don't know. And I know lots of people who are investors in technology companies, or venture capitalists, and they admit that too. It's why they invest in 100 companies, just hoping that 2 of them hit it really big, because they know they can't predict it. They can't predict it. They don't know. They can try their best, and they don't know. And I know people who found companies. They put their heart and soul into developing a new technology. They spend years on it. They're brilliant, and they just don't have the right timing. You know, they come up with something that's great, and it's actually 10 years ahead of its time, and that's the problem. They were actually too brilliant almost. So that's the thing I would leave, that, you know, no one can predict the future. And maybe in a sense that motivates me, that the future is always, in a sense, exciting. I'm always seeing exciting new things. And I always, you know, it's always exciting to just see new things unfold that I couldn't have predicted.
That's amazing. That's a really good quote. It really does humble you to learn. So thank you for coming on to the podcast. Also, I know that we said you got a LinkedIn, but if there's any other social media you want to plug in or your website, we'll make sure to include those in the show notes. If you know you're open with people connecting with you, reading your articles, checking out stuff. So I think this was a really great episode. I will say, like, I definitely did learn a lot here, and I might want to reach out to you for like further stuff on this, because I would like to see, like, maybe you go over actual patent. We talk about the terminology for it, because this is something where we talk about ownership and like equity within stuff, especially for like minorities, because we don't know a lot of it. Like, our culture doesn't have a lot of the access to this stuff. So I would definitely like to have you on like in a later podcast to kind of go over the specifics. Like, now that we got the high level out the way, let's dive into it if you're open to that.
Absolutely. No, I'd love to do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this out the podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Insightful on Technology podcast to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And we are posting every Thursday. Catch us on LinkedIn. Connect with Byron and I and Robert. We'll make sure to include everybody's LinkedIn's in the show notes. So thank you guys for tuning in. Any closing remarks, anybody? Or are we good?
We got to talk about robots at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shai. Thanks, Byron. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed being here.
Thank you. So
yeah, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.